Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Welcome to NHL Wraparound. Vic Morren, Neil Smith. Training camps will be opening up in a week. A lot of other news around the NHL to talk about. And as you know from our summer coolers, we have blanket coverage going on throughout the NHL, and that will be continuing through the end of the 25-26 season. And speaking of our summer coolers, one of the teams we paid a lot of attention to was the Dallas Stars. And Neil, you and I had made the point that the last three springs, the Stars always appear to have been really well positioned to win their first Stanley Cup since 1999. Something always appears to have gone wrong at just the wrong time. And our next guest is going to be looking to change that narrative in the spring of 2026.
And that's probably one of the main reasons why there was a change in Dallas, because they just couldn't push it over the goal line. So hopefully our guest, Glen Gulutzan, welcome in. You're going to be the man now in charge of trying to get that ball across the finish line.
Yeah, it's, you know what? It's very exciting. Obviously, Neil, when you're part of this league and you're getting a job as a head coach, you usually don't get to take over a team that's 106 point team, been to the Final Four 3 years in a row. You don't usually get that. You know, you've got to take over a rebuild, or you're. So this is especially for a guy like myself to come into a situation. Obviously, I've been here before, but to come in with a team like this is pretty special. It's actually really exciting.
A totally different situation for you, Gully, because the first time you were in Dallas, of course, you had coached the Texas Stars, and then they made a change and brought up their AHL coach, which was you, and then they made a management change in your second year, which led to you leaving Dallas at that point. But what do you think, or not what do you think, what were the conversations like between you and Jim Nill? Not exactly, but I mean, when you walked in there and said, okay, Jim, you're going to interview me. You remember, I'm still the same guy you fired a few years ago.
Well, that did cross my mind. And I actually, I did walk into the same room that I was fired in when I came to interview here. And it did dawn on me that I was walking into that room, and, but the situation was a little different. Obviously, Neil, that, it was, 13 years ago, 2013, and when I was here, I'd only worked with Jim. Jim and I were together. Joe Newendike was the GM who hired me, and Joe was here. And then when Joe was let go, Jim came in, and for about 3 weeks, Jim Nill and I met before he let me go. Now, my contract was up. I had a month left. Jim was, either going to re-sign me or he's going to let me go. But we had talked. We'd kind of talked for 3 weeks and talked about the players and the team. And, I was a young coach back then, but he brought me in on a Tuesday. I can remember it was after the long weekend. And he said, hey, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to bring in somebody else. And you know what? At that time, it was the right decision. And, I was just a young coach coming into a league, and this was a pretty veteran team. And, I needed a little bit more experience, and you don't know that back then, but certainly it happened. And, but there was a little rapport there, I guess, with Jim and I. And then when you move on, and 13 years later, and you see each other in Dallas, and, I was in Edmonton, I think it opened his door to bring me back. Now, I will say again, it was a little surreal to come back to my old office, and I had a few little chuckles to myself when I did come back in here.
Any reminders for you from your previous stay in Dallas that were present when you walked back in?
Well, you know what? It wasn't really anything. Everything looked the same and that. But what was really striking to me, and I said this to a few people now that since it's happened, is I was here when development camp was on, and so obviously Dennis Sotart was the second equipment guy when I was here. Now he's the head guy, and so there's some familiarity. Stretch Jason Radman was our head liaison here, our head team ops guy, and he's still here. So I had a great relationship with him. Mark Janko and Scott White were both in the organization. They're assistant GMs, and I had a relationship with them. Scott White was my general manager in Texas. So I had a real good rapport. But what was most striking, Vic, was development camps on, and I poked my head in there, and there's Jordy Ben, who I had in Texas as a rookie. And then, Vernie Fiddler walks through here, and Vern was around and with the alumni, and I had Vernie here. And then when I looked at the American League staff, they had Max Fortunas and Travis Morren as the assistants. I had both those guys in Texas, and then they hired Toby Peterson, who I had here in Dallas. So I was surrounded by guys that I'd been around and players that I'd coached who had now moved on into the coaching realm. So it felt very comfortable knowing that all these people around I had at some point in my career as their coach. So that was a little bit neat for me.
Before Neil takes you through the next part of our discussion here, Neil, I just wanted to ask you, because in your tenure in New York with the Rangers, you only had 4 head coaches. And could you have seen a circumstance similar to the one that Glenn has described, that you could possibly have rehired somebody that you had let go previous?
I think so, especially if I had ever hired a young guy. The problem in my time, Vic and Glenn, was that I got hired at 35 to be the GM of the Rangers. So everybody that I was going to hire after that was going to be older than me. And certainly Roger Nielsen was the first hire, and a Hall of Fame coach, got me through those first few years. If it hadn't been for him, I don't know if I would have even lasted more than a couple of years in New York. And then after that, of course, we after Roger Nielsen, we got Mike Keenan for that 1 year that everything went right. And then after that, Colin Campbell, who I'd known for a long, long time. And then I ended my time there with John Muckler. But so literally all of those guys were older than me because I was the young guy, much the same way as Glenn was the young coach in that situation. Now he's had 13 years to hone his skills. So I could see that could happen, especially if you've got, Jim Nill's going to have asked a gazillion people about Glen Gulutzan, and he's going to say, even though he knows him, he's still going to do his reconnaissance about how he's been since he's been with his team and what do people think and so on. And I'll guarantee you he got a very good input back from those people, or else he wouldn't have brought Gully back in to interview. So Gully, I got a little bit of a complicated question for the listeners. You and I were in the ECHL. You had my favorite franchise, the Las Vegas Wranglers. And your manager was Billy Johnson, right?
Yes.
And quite a character, Billy Johnson, and the stuff you guys did in Vegas, playing games in the middle of the night, and having that. Who's the governor from Illinois? Blagojevich. And you had a night where it was orange jumpsuits on all your players. Blagojevich night or something.
That's right.
Yeah. So you guys did a lot of crazy things. Yeah, and didn't you play games starting really late at night so that the casino people could get to the game?
Yeah, we did some unique things there, and I I will tell you that we had a midnight game. So just imagine this. I think morning skate was at 6:30 p.m. and then we had the midnight game, and it was quite a hit. It because it was for the shift change. So back then, around 11 p.m. was shift change in Vegas. So the night workers were done at, the night workers were going on at 11, but people were done at 11. And so those people could come to the game and watch the midnight game. Now, we started doing it as the last game before Christmas because, the other teams play until 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And so then it was the last game before the Christmas break. And then it evolved, which was a smart idea, but then it evolved into a midnight over 21 game, which threw the whole thing out of whack is because basically I think you had to sign a waiver if you wanted to bring your kids past midnight for the midnight game. And then anything went on the screen or in the stands. It got a little, and I'll tell you what, at 1:30 in the morning, hockey fans can get a little rowdy. So there was, it was quite a fan base at about 1:30 in the morning. But you know what? We did a lot of unique things like that in Vegas, a lot of outside the box stuff that quite frankly, was unique and fun at the time.
I want to stay with your time back there because I remember it so well. Like it seems like yesterday to me. And as I said, I own Johnstown, which was at the opposite end of the spectrum from Vegas. But golly, when you did you ever think A, that Vegas might get an NHL team, and B, did you think that NHL would work in Las Vegas?
I didn't know if Vegas would ever get a team, Neil. I don't know if I don't think I thought they could or would. But I did know if they did, I was very, if you dig back through the archives, I had a lot of people talking to me that last year when I was in the NHL. I believe I was with Calgary asking me how they think that franchise is going to do in Vegas. And I thought, I said, and I don't want to be one of these guys, but I thought it'd be very successful because one is, I think the Vegas local people, which I was one of them for a while, I was there for 6 years. They were really looking for something of their own to call their own. And now it's not a really big college town. So I'd been in Auston. I'd seen the Longhorns and just how dedicated that city was to college football and college athletics. Vegas doesn't have that same feel, in my opinion. When I was there with UNLV, there was no other, professional franchise there. And I just felt that the local people were very, had a big desire to have something of their own, something they could call their own. And then just with my experience, we averaged 5,900 or 5,700 fans there in that Orleans arena, which was a beautiful facility to play out of. And, Michael Gaughan was the guy who built that facility, but there were a lot of hockey fans in Las Vegas, a lot of transplants, especially from out east, guys out east that were raised with hockey. So there was an appetite for hockey, and I just thought with that appetite and people coming in to see games, and then also just the fact that something locals could call their own, I thought it really could work, and it's been tremendous.
Well, let's move from our days in Vegas. I could be here all day talking about the Wranglers, and then my trips with the Bruckheimer tournament in the summer.
Yeah,
but
yes.
let's get on to the Dallas Stars and your coaching involvement. When you coach in the ECHL, or for that matter in the American League, but mostly in the ECHL, you're doing every job there. You're recruiting, you're coaching, you're doing the travel, you're making sure the per diems are there. You're literally on top of everything. And then, of course, you move to the American League, where there's a little, you're focused now on player development more than anything. But you're still doing a lot of stuff because American League is smaller. Now you get into the National Hockey League. How have you evolved since then to understand that what your role is within this larger organization?
Yeah, you're certainly hitting on something that I've had to take a look at over the years. Just starting out in minor league, in the ECHL, basically AA, you are chief cook and bottle washer. You are you're the immigration guy, you're the flights guy, you're the per diem guy, you're the bad guy, you're the sitting guy, you're the scratch guy, you're everything. And then you get to the American League, and all that drops away, and primarily you're the coach, but yet those players, they still need you, and there's nobody around critiquing you. You're kind of left to your own devices. It's a fantastic place to try to hone your skills on coaching. And you've got a very attentive group of players, because at that level, they all still need you. They need you to get to the next level, to ultimately where they want to go. So it was a very enjoyable place to coach. And then you get to the NHL, and you're dealing with the elite athletes. You're dealing with, a little bit of, the business side, the agent side. And then the two biggest adjustments that I felt for young coaches, especially when I came up, was the schedule, of how demanding an NHL schedule is, how many games, game after game, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, just it goes on and on and on. There's not a lot of practice time. And then how big your staffs are and how many people are around. And then you add in the media. You go from basically doing everything at the minor league level, and literally everything, to you're managing a bunch of people. You got strength guys, you got conditioning guys, you got three medical guys, three equipment guys, you got sports performance people. You got your GM and your two assistant GMs. And so it becomes this big entity, and combine that with the demands of that schedule. It is like three different leagues. It's really three different leagues. It's just three different skill sets almost. And I'm not sure how much one prepares you for the other. I think the East Coast League prepares you to work. The American League allows you to coach a little bit, and then you have to manage and coach at the highest level, schedule players and staff.
In between your two stints in Dallas, you had 2 years in Calgary in 2016, 2017, made the playoffs. One of those 2 years, you had the ability and the privilege to coach Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, amongst others. But in those 2 years in Calgary, how did you feel that transition has helped you now that you're back in Dallas again?
Yeah, that was a good transition. We had a lot of really good, those players you mentioned, obviously very good young players. That helped me. That stint helped me certainly. It got me to look at the new player almost. When I first come into the league with Dallas, we had an older team. I had Jaromir Jagr, I had Ray Whitney in Dallas. They were both my age, and coming into Dallas, I had young Sam Bennett, I had young rookie Matthew Tkachuk, obviously Johnny Gaudreau, a young great player, Sean Monahan. So it helped me work with the younger stars of the league. And just what their mindset was compared to, the Brendan and the Morrows and the Jagrs and the Whitneys and those guys. It kind of filled in a gap for me to see these great young stars and how they viewed the game as young players. And I think it really helped me even as I went on to Edmonton, now working with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl from a young age, it helped me a little bit see the development path of young players, and where they could go, where they could benefit from some of the older players I coached in Yarmouth, and give them some of that experience along with, so bringing that to Dallas, I see a full spectrum here. I see, Jamie Benn and Tyler and Duchesne, who are great players on the late, mid 30s side. And then I see great young players, and, obviously Johnson and Harley and coming, and these young guys coming. And then you have those mid-range guys, obviously Rantanen and Hintz and Robertson that are coming. And then, there's so many good players here. So I think those experiences, working with young, working with old, anytime you get experience, it's a valuable thing. But I've been very fortunate, the Sedins and players like that, to work with some of the great older players, some of the great younger players, got to watch their development. And now in Dallas, we have a real blend of player of those types. So, for me, I've worked with all those genres. So it just helps you go into a locker room and know what maybe each player at different age groups is kind of thinking and what they might need.
Before Calgary, there was Vancouver, and after Calgary, there was Edmonton. And you joined the Oilers after they finished last in the power play, 2018, 30th, dead last. And in the 7 seasons that you were there, they were in the top 5 times, best 3 times, NHL record in 22-23 at 32.4%. But obviously you got a little bit different dynamic going here in Dallas, because you had McDavid, you got Draisaitl, and you had Evan Bouchard at the point, and you could see the way that power play was structured. But pretty much they would be out there for at least a minute and a half of every power play. And in Dallas, you mentioned all of these players that you have at your disposal now: Duchesne, Hintz, Rantanen, Johnson, Harley, Benn, Sagan, Bork, Robertson, and Heiskanen. And this is almost an abundance of riches, in that you are truly going to be able to send out 2 very proficient units with the man advantage for this coming season.
Yeah, the one thing that I've done, and at least I had some really good guys in to show me the way in Edmonton a little bit, and even before that, I've got to work with John Tortorella, and I've got to work with Ken Hitchcock and Dave Tippett. Obviously young coach in Chris Knoblaw, Jay Woodcroft. I work with Mike Sullivan. So I know when I got to Edmonton and we started that power play, Todd McClellan actually was the coach. So he had another name in there for myself. And those coaches, all of them who came there, let me do my thing with the power play in Edmonton. And it kind of evolved into this, we had great players, but it evolved into this thing that kind of changed a little bit of the way teams penalty killed, because these young guys, and McDavid and Draisaitl, Bouchard, they were so dynamic. But what all those coaches told me, they let me do my thing, and that's what I'm going to do here. Is Neil Graham is a young coach who's come in, not unlike myself, spent a lot more time in the minors than I did, 8 years. He's certainly ready for this challenge. He's ran a great power play in the American League for the last 2 years. So he's going to come in and he's charged of that. But the players we have at our disposal certainly lends itself to 2 great units. And what you're hoping for as a coach, which we've had, in seasons, not in Edmonton, we've had 2 great units, is you hope for some of that internal competition and drive between those 2 units, which can drive the numbers up higher. Because you can put, together, really, you've got so many good players. When you hope those 2 units start competing against each other and in a quiet, healthy competition. And then it just allows you as a coach to push them more, and they're going to get an internal push. I find in this league, whenever you get an internal push from the players, whether it be young players pushing old players, and then old players, wanting to hold on to their spots, and then even younger players coming up to the American League that are putting heat on people because they want to take jobs. I think that internal push is important, and I think that's what we get on our power play. I think that's what drives these guys, because they're competitive. So when you lean on their competitiveness, you get results.
Gully, I guess the only thing more apropos than being hired by Dallas with this question I'm going to ask would be getting hired by the LA Kings. But you beat the Dallas Stars, and you found, obviously, coaches will find the weaknesses in the opposition during a long series where you're playing each other every other night for 2 weeks. And you exploited some of Dallas's weaknesses. Does exploitation of the Stars in the playoffs going to help you know what you need to fix or what you need to do better now that you're the head coach of the Stars?
Yeah, I think it does. I know what, at the end of the day, I do know what we feared of the Dallas Stars in Edmonton, and I know what we didn't fear. And just that information alone lets me know that, moving forward, there are certain things that we do need to do a little bit better here, because we have so many great pieces. And if I talked about this in my press conference, just that 1 degree of physicality, and I don't want people mixing this up. And obviously everything we do is internal, but I'm not talking about just body checks. I'm talking about just the ability to grind people down come playoff time. And I look at this roster that we have and the team that's assembled and how many great players there are. But what I also like is our best players are big, and they're big guys. And the playoffs really is about, it's a little bit more about big people, big trees, and you have to have the right skill. And I look at the Rantanens and the Robertsons and, Dutchie and Benny and Hintz, and they're all big guys. So what I do, or I am asking, and I've actually told all the players this already too, is I am asking for a little bit more of the word grit, a little bit 1 degree of a little bit of that come playoff time, because I don't think, you look at Florida, they got something really special going on there. They've been to the finals, and now they've won 2 cups. Success leaves clues, and they certainly have some success there. And we do have to look at that. I'm sure everyone's looking at it, but a team that's as close as Dallas, I think we need to really take a look at it and add a little bit of 1 degree to our game. You're never going to be somebody else, but you can certainly steal a piece. And we need to do that here.
Gully, last thing from me is that, I've watched Florida carefully the last 3 years. We actually had Keith Kachuk on the show talking about the Florida Panthers because he's seen so much of them. This was 2 years ago. I just throw this out to you because as a coach, I wonder how you feel about this. The one thing about the Florida Panthers is that they play playoff hockey right from October. And they don't ever really change. They go into the playoffs playing the same game they were playing in March and April. And I don't see many teams that do that. And so it's, to me anyways, it's been kind of easy to predict who was going to win in the playoffs because you saw the same thing all season long. And I wonder, you were with Edmonton. Edmonton doesn't play that style. They play a different style. But what are your thoughts on that, what I just said? Because that seems to me to be the key to Florida, is that they don't change when the playoffs come. They don't have to pick it up a notch. They've been playing like that all year.
Yeah, and I think that's so right. And that is what I alluded to here again, going back to the press conferences. It can't be a foreign concept. You have to listen. The playoffs become a little bit more gritty. They just do. And I like to say that, it becomes everything that your dad told you to do when you were a kid. It becomes, the playoffs become, basically the things that require almost no talent. So your dad told you, you got to come back hard. You got to back check back in the old day. You got to finish your check, son. You got to get to the net. You got to shoot the puck. You got to play hard. You got to win that battle. At least that's what most of our dads told us. And you have to add that into your 82 games because it can't be such a foreign concept, because that's what comes to the forefront in game 83 is these concepts. It becomes hand-to-hand combat. It really does. And the farther you go, the more it becomes a wrestling match between two guys on the mat for 3 minutes. So you have to be able to wrestle in those 3 minutes. You do. And if you haven't wrestled, 3-minute matches throughout the year, you've got by on your skill and whatever. It's hard. It's hard. So you might as well start training yourself through 82 to play game 83.
Well, Glenn, this has been great. By the way, I looked up how to pronounce the paw where you're from in Manitoba. I'm sure there's a lot of people say, where is the pass?
Well, I'm gonna say one thing. So I have to say this. So I was born in, they call it the pass, but it's the paw. It's a French name. I was born in the paw, Manitoba, but I was raised in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan. So my mom was in the paw, visiting her sister, and I was born there. So there's a whole bunch of people. And hey, Neil, there's a picture of me in my Oiler outfit in the rink in the paw, Manitoba. But there are a bunch of people born in 1971 asking, has anyone went to school with this guy? Has anyone seen him in a school in La Paz, Manitoba? And the answer is no, because I was raised in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, which is about an hour and a half south, a town of 1,200 people. Now, I do have to say this for the town. I work a hockey school there. We've done it for 17 years. We get 130 kids every summer. And the grief I've been taking from the mayor and everyone of that town was, everyone thinks you're from the paw. You have to tell people you are from Hudson Bay. So I'm telling you now, I'm a Saskatchewan guy. I'm from Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan. And the people in Hudson Bay are choked that the paw gets mentioned. So I'm just setting the record straight.
Yeah, well, then I can't use what I was going to say, which was my mom was from Winnipeg. So
What's
I thought
that?
we had that. My mother, who taught me hockey and was a hockey player, is from Winnipeg. And so I thought we had that in common in the Manitoba thing. My mother, of course, moved on to Toronto after World War II. But the connections you have in especially in Canada. But, one last thing, guys, there is a number of players playing in the league right now that were born in a place where their parents just happened to be at that time. And they didn't, because you look at a guy like Kesselring, the defenseman that was traded from Utah this year. And Vic, he's from a southern place like that obvious. I think his dad was playing in the ECHL or something, and he was born there. And then Ryan Hartman, who was born on Hilton Head. So I mean, I'm sure he didn't learn his hockey in Hilton Head.
No.
So you get that a lot now. You get players that just happen to be, I guess they were born when their parents were at their other house and not the one that they preside at. You might have started a trend there as well. See.
Yeah,
you didn't even know.
You know what? I got 2 kids born in Las Vegas, so that's always a conversation starter, especially when you're up in Canada, and my kids on roll call got to say they're born in Vegas. It was always a treat for them.
Yeah, when you play the Golden Knights, do a lot of the old Wrangler fans come to see you?
You know what? I run into them all the time. And it just goes to the hockey fan base there in Vegas. It's what a great fan base. I run into them all the time that remember the old Wrangler days.
Well, Gully, thanks for doing this. Like we're so happy for you and for this opportunity. And you've got a heck of a division to play in, though. I mean, that's a very competitive division, and it's going to be really fun to watch you coach this year. And hopefully when you come to UBS Arena, I haven't looked at the schedule to see when it is. We can perhaps meet up and say hello in person, because I'm at every game for the Islanders.
Yeah, I'd love to make sure we see each other. We usually do once a year when I'm coming out east there.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate.
Thanks, Vic. Thanks, Neil.
We appreciate you doing this, and we wish you all the luck in the world.
Yeah. Thank you very much, guys.
All the best, Gully. Thanks again.
Yeah.
Neil, you could certainly tell that Glen Gulutzan clearly understands and can see what the end game is for the Stars. And the question is going to be whether his players can execute it.
Yeah, for sure. And he understands what he's got, what he's walking into. And he was right when he said that usually you don't get this kind of opportunity. Usually the coach gets let go when everything has failed. And in this case, he's taking over a good team. Now, the one thing that I could have said was, doesn't that put a little bit more pressure on you to perform, because you're you're expected to maybe win the cup or come close to it. But it's exciting to see him get this opportunity. And it's quite a thing, a compliment to Jim Nill, that he has the fortitude to rehire the guy that he fired.
It's going to be a very interesting season in Dallas, because I think, as we have seen in prior seasons, the expectation is that this team is going to make a deep run and perhaps take that final step into the Stanley Cup final in 2026.
Yeah, and they play in such a tough division, as we talked about on the summer cooler. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun.
A little bit of housekeeping before we move on. Michael Kesselring, who was traded to Buffalo during this past offseason. Florence, South Carolina.
There you go. See, and I thought it was South Carolina, because that's why I would have paid attention to it, but I didn't want to throw it out there and be wrong. But his dad was playing for the PD Pride. That's who played in Florence, South Carolina.
Other news from around the NHL. We start off with a sad note that last Friday, Hall of Fame goaltender, Montreal Canadiens legend Ken Dryden passed away from cancer at the age of 78. This came as a surprise to a lot of people. And of course, we had Scotty Bowman on only a week ago on our Hall of Fame series, and he had no idea that Dryden was this ill.
Well, Ken was a very, very private guy, and he probably didn't tell people. I talked to a number of people who knew Ken real well. I knew Ken, but not, I obviously didn't play with him or anything. And they all said the same thing. He's a very private guy, but we will miss his intelligence most of all, because of all the people who are in this great game. Ken was one of the deepest thinkers that I think you'll ever meet.
Politician, author, big goalie for his time in particular. And, you think of the Gump Worsleys, the Roy Waters, the George Hainsworths of their day. I mean, he came in, he was 6'4", came up late in the 70-71 season, went 6-0 for the Canadiens before going on to lead them to the Stanley Cup over the Chicago Blackhawks, winning the Conn Smythe Trophy even before he won the Calder as the Rookie of the Year the following season. But there was this really remarkable dignity that he had about him in net. And I even remember playing goalie in street hockey, and I used to rest my blocker and my glove hand on top of the stick and with my chin on top of my two glove hands, similar to the way that he did. And there was just such a charisma about his presence.
Yeah, there sure was. And Ranger fans, of course, always talk about how Doug Risebrough hit Bunny Larocque in the head in warm-up, and that forced Ken Dryden back into the net. And, of course, the Montreal Canadiens never looked back. That's one of the folklore stories of being around the New York Rangers.
He had some memorable books also, most notably The Game, which is regarded as one of the finest sports books ever written. And it was basically a daily account of the Canadiens in that final Stanley Cup year of 78-79. But he also wrote Scotty Bowman's autobiography.
Yeah. I mean,
and the first book that I had read of his was one that he did with Mark Mulvoy of Sports Illustrated at the time, called Face Off at the Summit. And that was a daily account of his experience during the Super Series that was played in the fall of 1972, which, of course, Team Canada managed to win the final 3 games, all winning goals by Paul Henderson. And Dryden was in goal at the end when Henderson won Game 8, as it turned out to be the Team Canada winning 4-3-1.
And of course, Ken Dryden was the color commentator at Lake Placid for the 1980 Miracle on Ice when the USA won gold at that. So what an amazing life he led.
Working alongside the legendary Al Michaels for ABC. More news on Canadian goaltenders. Carey Price, now a San Jose Shark. He is traded along with a 2026 fifth-round pick to the Sharks. In exchange, the Canadiens received defenseman Gannon Larocque. And the Canadiens in this exchange wind up picking up $10.5 million in cap space on the final year of the original deal that Price had signed back in 2017 with then general manager Mark Bergevin. The Habs are now cap compliant, leaving Florida and Vegas as the only teams over at this point. And the Sharks, who had the space, still $9.24 million to the good. Price last played in 2021-22, only 5 games for the Habs that season. He is never expected to play again because of this knee injury. So this is clearly just a transactional deal that works well for both sides.
Well, and I think that the reason why the compensation back to San Jose for picking up the last year was so little, they must have been, Vic, under the cap, under the floor when this all went down.
How about some more salary cap news?
Oh, can't wait.
Well, I didn't think you could, so here we go. The NHL is going to implement a salary cap for the playoffs effective next spring. This is part of a memorandum of understanding, was agreed upon in part of the new CBA. This was agreed upon on June 27th. There will be an averaged club salary that will be calculated, and all teams must be compliant. 18 skaters, 2 goalies must be submitted to the NHL Central Registry by 3 p.m. local time or 5 hours before their first playoff game, whichever comes first, and subsequent lineup changes must meet the same deadlines. So, Neil, explain the purpose of this being put into place.
Because what happens is there's somebody on your team that's an important player, so you put him on long-term injured reserve, LTIR. You bring in another player, perhaps at the deadline, you trade for a player who's pretty good, like not just a fill-in, like a pretty good player. You play till the end of the regular season with that team, and then you add that really good player that you put on LTIR in the playoffs, so you have an overwhelming chance. Let's look at examples of this that's happened in the past. Of course, Kane with Chicago in 2015, Nikita Kucherov with Tampa Bay in 2021, the captain of the Vegas Golden Knights, Mark Stone in 2023, and then, of course, Matt Tkachuk this past year in 2025.
there's been a lot of griping from other clubs from around the NHL, but you have to credit the general managers of the 4 clubs that you just mentioned because it was legal.
Yeah, and you do everything you can that's legal that benefits your team. That's your job.
Let's transition over to some fashion news because the NHL is relaxing their dress code as part of the new CBA. And I think one of the things that makes the NHL so unique is the way their athletes appear when they are walking into and out of arenas in suits, in ties, in jackets. And certainly there have been players that have had some pretty different expressions with their suits. And we could look at David Pastrnak and Auston Matthews, William Nylander, and PK Subban even before that. And you just hope that this relaxed dress code does not take expression too far in the other direction. Because I believe, and I think you believe also, that the suits really make the NHL special.
I do too. And the uniformity of everything in the NHL has always been important. So what one guy does, they all do. So we'll just see if we start to see a lot of individualism because of this and how far some people push it.
It'll be interesting to see if it gets pushed too hard, if it gets reeled back in a little bit too.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll just have to see. COVID did a lot of things to everyday dress for everybody that relaxed it. So I guess the NHL is just trying to catch up with the fashion in normal society.
More fashion news. The Seattle Kraken have introduced an alternate jersey that glows in the dark as a nod to bioluminescence, the emission of light by living organism through chemical reaction commonly found in sea creatures. Thoughts?
That's way above my pay grade. I mean, uniforms that glow in the dark because this reaction is found in sea creatures. I guess it goes with their name, the Seattle Kraken.
I thought you just wanted to hear me say bioluminescence.
I did. I like the way you said it too.
Thank you. Anyway, the Kraken will debut that jersey on this November 1st against the New York Rangers, and they will wear them 11 other times this season. And the Ottawa Senators have also unveiled an alternate red jersey that they will wear at least 4 times on Ignite the Red promotion nights. The first time they will wear that jersey will be October the 16th against full teams, Seattle.
Maybe one can wear glow in the dark and the other one can wear Ignite the Red.
You're going to be paying attention, though.
I am.
The U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2025 was announced. Joe Pavelski, Zach Parise, Scott Gomez, Tara Mountsie, who was a gold medalist in 1998. That was the first ever year for women's Olympic hockey. And the legendary photographer Bruce Bennett will also be part of the induction, which will take place on December 10th in St. Paul. And Bruce Bennett is somebody that I promise we're going to have on this season because his lens tell more stories than any photographer in the history of hockey.
Well, like they've always said, a picture says 1,000 words. And Bruce has taken thousands and thousands of photos.
With that, I'm going to close our show for today. Real good times. Special thanks to Dallas Stars head coach Glen Gulutzan for joining us.
And of course, thanks to all of you that are listening out there or watching on YouTube. Reach us individually. Get us your email address. Do it at vic@nhlwraparound.com or neil@nhlwraparound.com. All these podcasts are available on every platform you can think of, from Apple to Amazon to iHeart to Spotify, YouTube. And of course, a complete catalog of everything we do is always on nhlwraparound.com. So continue to get the word out. Please get people to subscribe. We want to make this thing grow, and we want to keep doing it, which we're going to do.
Sounds good from this end. The balance of the mini podcasts of the summer coolers will be coming out throughout the rest of the week. They are being received extremely well, and we thank all of you for listening in on those. Next week, Hockey Hall of Fame edition returns with member of the class of 2023, Pierre Turgeon. We'll look forward to speaking with you then.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.